What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Sports Card Madness. This is an interesting one, not on our usual day. I had to get somebody from Collect Media on because they have been dropping insane stories, Jordan secret signings, and just crazy stuff that I was like, all right, I need to get somebody from there on. And the idea is in this special episode, we will take a look at 5 interesting opportunities that's coming out of the reporting being done by Collect Media. So I'm Nick, your host, like usual. I'm here with Will, who's works for Collect Media. Will, welcome to the pod.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, happy to be here. Yeah, as you said, I'm an editor and reporter for Collect. Myself, Darren Ravel is our founder. Ben Burrows and Matt Liberman are 4 people really writing, reporting, diving into all the stuff you see on our website on collect.com without the vowels. And Yeah, so we're about I don't know, 2 months into launching. We've done I don't know how many stories, but a lot, and we've broken some great news. We've done some awesome features, and yeah, we're really excited about it, and we're kind of just getting going. So happy to be
Excellent.
here.
Yeah. I'm psyched to have you here for a couple of reasons. One, you've done great work so far. I am wired into the 86 Fleer stuff and MJ and that stuff. It totally caught me off guard, which was very impressive because I'm not caught off guard very often by something in that space. So I figured I had to get you on and we could just talk about some stories that you've done. But I think out of those stories, there are some opportunities that collectors can look at, just cool stuff happening. So the first one was movie stubs. You wrote an interesting article about that and how tickets are game tickets, things like that are becoming saturated and people are shifting to not only, movie stubs, but also international movie stubs. Can you talk about that story at all or that kind of space?
So yeah, this was a really fun one because I spoke with Matt Fuller, who's kind of director of authentication of tickets at PSA. And going into it, I had a few things I wanted to talk to him about. One of them was movie subs because I'd seen it been pretty interesting. But I was pretty shocked because I just straight up first question I asked him was, what's the biggest trend right now you're seeing coming through the grading room? And he didn't even take a beat and he said movie tickets.
Wow.
Like, all right, let's get into that. And he obviously wasn't saying it's beating out sports or concerts, but he was saying movie stubs are the biggest trend right now. He wasn't saying it's coming in more than sports or concerts, but he was saying that just kind of the delta over the last couple of years has been the most insane, and that really took me off guard. So we really dove into that, and it's a really cool market and a surprising one because it has the typical kind of facets of the ticket market, right? Like these are things generally meant to be thrown out. You crumple it in your pocket, not supposed to be in good condition. But there's some cool wrinkles. So, the most valuable, like the vast majority of the top 20 most valuable sales of movie tickets are all Japanese, all of them.
Huh.
And if you like look on eBay or wherever to find a movie ticket, they all are Japanese. And the reason is there's just apparently a really rich history of collecting movie tickets already in Japan, like going back years. Um, and that plus the fact that the tickets, if you look at them, they're really gorgeous, unlike American movie tickets that are just kind of like Saving Private Ryan, this theater, this time. There's real artwork on them. So that was really fascinating. You know, and then we also talked about the differences between kind of the screening tickets, the opening night tickets, the opening week tickets, and how that's kind of created a little bit of a hierarchy
Hmm.
in this new market. And that was also surprising because, a movie ticket is a movie ticket, at least in my mind, until I had spoken to him. So having him lay that all out was quite cool. But
So
yeah, I mean,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Like
it's
I think to myself, I just throw them away. I haven't never really thought of keeping a movie ticket, maybe like a Star Wars one or something like that, which tells me that maybe in this space, you get a ticket autographed by, a Star Wars character or something like that, that could have some value. The Japanese thing's interesting to me because I know in vinyl, the Japanese versions of vinyl go for, significantly higher prices than regular vinyl. So it's just that like that foreign aspect adds value, and as you say, the tickets just look nicer too. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
they just there's just clearly a lot more effort and intentionality put into it as opposed to ours.
All right.
And, and they're really gorgeous. Yeah.
Excellent. I like that. All right. So, everyone, take a look at movie stubs and movie tickets and what's happening in that market, and just see what's happening on eBay and maybe start collecting them. Who
And
knows?
what's cool, I'll just say, is like we're talking about these are cheap.
Yeah.
Like the top, most of the sales are under $200. Like this is not some highfalutin market. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. So it's an affordable place to enter. And again, I mean, we all go to Comic Cons and shows and fan expos and things like that. Grab some movie stubs on eBay for a few bucks and get them signed by characters, because who knows, maybe in the future there's kind of a rush on them. Because I imagine it's, especially the US supply, we just chuck them. So it's interesting. If you keep them there, it could be something going forward. Very cool. All right, that's number one. I like that. Movie stubs, very interesting. The second one, near and dear to my heart, is vintage autographs. So I look at this modern collecting world and all these, parallels and just bananas stuff, like these one of ones that aren't really one of ones. And then I look at vintage that's just not making anymore. Reprints don't count, right? So you've got vintage stuff, it's already rare. And now you put an autograph on it, or you already has an autograph on it, and it becomes even more rare, especially for deceased players. So I love this space. What were you able to dig up in this area?
I mean, I was pretty tapped into it already, but just going through the numbers and seeing, it's like okay, a ticket like the 52 mantle. Sorry, a card like the 52 mantle. Of course the prices are remaining pretty steady and everything, despite the fact that there's massive supply. But it's to me, I look at it and it's like, oh, here's a way for like the highest of high-end collectors to it's honestly the biggest flex to be like, no, it's not good enough for me to just have the 52 mantle or like a Jackie rookie. Like I need to have something differentiating that from everyone else. Um, and I mean, we've seen pretty incredible sales over the last couple of years. Like the you take even a card from like the middle of a career, let's call it like Mantle's like 58
Hmm.
all-star card or whatever. You know, those will still sell. The condition almost doesn't matter because we're talking about a handful of signed copies.
Right?
Those will out A signed copy will outpace a high grade by like serious multiples, and it's routinely done that. And they continue to be rare because, like you said, we're not getting more of them, and we're not getting more of them signed. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's just a really fascinating little niche to see where people are able to kind of find value and differentiate among the
It's
high.
funny the market is starting to say, okay, you have a PSA 8 unautographed. There's no signature on the card. And then you've got a PSA 5 that is autographed. And Jeff Wilson actually said this, and I agree with him, that 5 that has the autograph should be equal to the 8 that doesn't have an autograph, if not better in terms of price. And it's funny that now the market looks like it's trending towards agreeing with the both of us.
Yeah, I mean, I think that all depends on the pop on the autographed cards,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
I think for the super rare stuff, I mean, forget eight, the five's going to be worth more than almost any of them, other than
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree, and I just think it's so cool because also in 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 large part, you can be getting like these contemporaneous signatures too, right? It's like a kid might have gotten it at the time they pulled it out of the pack. So that's like it's like a side door into getting
Oh
an
yeah.
early career signature from a player.
I know it's there's amazing stories. I'm an autograph junkie, so I like the fact that something has happened to the card. Like it was either held, might have been 1 second, but at least it was contacted with the
Totally,
actual player,
totally.
which I think is pretty awesome. In some cases, I'll even keep the pen that was signed used to sign the card, which is pretty rad. Um, all right, I like it. So vintage autographs all day long. I agree with this, especially deceased players. One other area that you did an article on that is super niche, and the article was actually about niches, is tennis, right? When I think of tennis, I think of, there's some goats, right? You've got the Williams sisters and, Arthur Ashe and players like that, Andre Agassi, Pete Sampras, and but I don't
You didn't think
really.
my guy, Federer. Come on.
Yeah, right. I know Federer. Yeah. So I don't own any tennis cards, which is interesting. It's just not my thing. So what did you find out about this niche or tennis collectors in general?
Yeah, so the reason why I started reporting on this story wasn't as much to do with tennis specifically as it was tennis as kind of like a representative for a, a non-mainstream sport, right? So
Sure.
I kind of paired tennis and golf, and I spoke to the owners of the tennis auction, Prestige Memorabilia, and Golden Age, which is a golf auction house, respectively. And I kind of got their take on why they believe the best avenue for their respective, sport memorabilia, collectibles, and associated things is not at the biggest auction houses. It's actually at these niche, highly targeted, specialized, and places that can boast expertise. Ryan Carey from Golden Age, who it's funny, it feels silly to even call Golden Age a niche auction house because they're not. They've sold the most valuable ticket ever. The Tiger Slam irons for over 5 million. But just golf as a sport certainly not as popular in the hobby as many other sports. But Ryan said to me, he's like, look, I play golf with the consigners and the bidders. Like I I'm able to talk to them. It's like we're all obsessed with golf. He was telling me. It's like that is just not, you're not gonna find that at kind of a generalist auction house. And that was kind of his view. And Matt from Prestige Memorabilia, which is, so that's a tennis auction that's kind of just getting underway. They're doing their fourth auction as we speak. That he echoed that as well. And it was a really interesting look into like it's not always best to get the most eyeballs as much as it is to get the best eyeballs. And that was
Right.
really what they clearly believed, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. Like they're going for it and succeeding. And I just found that to be really cool because it's kind of counter to what I think is the belief that one would generally have, right? You just
Yeah.
you put on eBay,
Go
you want as
wide. Yeah.
many eyeballs as possible. It's like, no, like what about the most highly specialized email list possible that's gonna get you to
Oh, of
the people,
course.
you know? So
Yeah, I agree. It's like marketing 101. But I mean, as the audience gets reduced, usually the passion or intensity of that audience increases. So
totally.
if you squeeze the audience down to people that watch every tennis match and all the opens and they collect everything, and you hit them with something that they're very passionate about, that will do well at auction versus something that's on eBay. It's just a wide audience and you're just throwing darts, right? So I think the niche thing is cool. Um, I think you're going to see more of that as the market gets scattered. Rugby, tennis, cricket. Who knows, right?
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, especially like expanding globally too. So
right.
I just want something that Ryan Carey from Golden Age uh said after he sold Andy Warhol portrait of Jack necklace from Warhol's Athlete series. And, obviously Nicklaus golfer, there's the tie there, but, you know, a Warhol, it was the type of Warhol that would typically be at one of the big three art auction houses. It was
Right.
really an incredible piece. And he was so ecstatic to say after the sale that the winner was a golfer. It was not it was not an art collector. He said the art collectors fell asleep. The winner was a
Wow.
golfer. And I was like, that's it. That's really in a nutshell, I think everything.
That's really cool. I love it. I love it. All right. So the other trend that I'm seeing is uncut sheets. Okay. So I've seen a few over the past year. I saw an 86 Fleer uncut sheet get sold at Golden. I saw a 1969 Topps uncut sheet. I can't remember that auction house. I don't think it was Golden. And then you did an article on a Pokemon uncut sheet that broke a record, right? Can you talk about this sale and like uncut sheets in general?
Yeah, so it's all this sale's kind of separated from uncut sheets a little bit. I'll say with uncut sheets, just generally, what I think's really great about them and I think I talk about this all the time, like displayability cannot be overstated. And you frame one of those uncut sheets and throw it on a wall, it looks gorgeous, right? So I
Yep.
think that's a huge piece of it. Um, but with respect to that article, so this was a test sheet produced by Wizards of the Coast, who the producers of Magic the Gathering as well as Pokemon. They produced it in 1998 when Pokemon came over to the US and Nintendo of America they inked a deal with Wizards of the Coast and they were testing out the printing presses basically. But it was 1998, a year before the actual release. So they were doing it with the fronts as Pokemon, including a Blastoise, and the back as Magic the Gathering cards. Um, so this one ended up well, I'll back up a little bit. So a few years ago, there's kind of a drip, drip, drip in these crazy secretive Facebook groups for people that love rare Magic the Gathering cards, which I didn't know much about, but I snuck my way into the group. Um, about holy cow, like I have a card that has Blastoise on the front and Magic the Gathering on the back. What's going on? And eventually there were like four found. CGC does this incredible investigation. They're using like forensics and like infrared lasers. It looks like a science experiment. And they posted a great kind of report on their blog. And in that process of authenticating them, they brought in a sheet that was sent to them from like a high level Wizard of the Coast employee. And the other day, last week, I was talking to people at Heritage, and they were saying it's the same sheet that had been at auction. So the sheet that was used to authenticate these cards, which on their own had gone for a couple $100,000 over the last few years, um, was now at auction, and it sold for 325 grand, which is a record for any TCG uncut sheet, which beat out like the unlimited test print. It's just super cool because it's like two of the early foundational and most important TCG games
Right.
literally on one on what they couldn't be more tied together.
The only problem with that is, for man cave material, you almost need like a stand that's got glass on both sides because you put it on the wall, you're losing one cool side of it, right? So you
You
need
gotta have it.
some sort of like stand up display in your man cave for it.
Yeah, maybe you just have it rotate.
That I like that little LED lights on it and everything. Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, I see that 86 Fleer uncut sheet would be ridiculous in my office. It'd be amazing. It's not, if another one comes up, I'm going to be eyeballing it for sure. I like that whole trend. All right, so this is the last trend, number 5, the photo match game worn stuff. It's interesting. Like game worn things obviously hold significant value because they were on the player when something happened, like a record was broken, or it was a great year for that player, or just something interesting happened and they happen to be wearing this. And now technology has kind of caught up to a point where you have photo match services where they will look at photos, look at videos, look at the item and determine if that with a certain degree of accuracy was indeed the item in that photo, in that video, in that game with that player. I've always been a little skeptical. I am a skeptic at heart, I think. And, I just wonder like how accurate is the photo match? What if they do get it wrong? And if they get it wrong, the consequences, it could lose like 95% of its value if they aren't correct. But I guess that's the game we all play when we use authenticators. They're human, right? And they'll make mistakes. So, can you tell me about this whole game worn trend and the photo
Yeah.
matching that supports it and that
Yes.
article you wrote?
So this was kind of a feature on the really just obvious and unavoidable trend that we've seen over the last couple of years of these incredibly massive sales of game worn jerseys, especially Jordan. There's the Last Dance jersey that sold for 10 million, as well as just the Kobe jersey. Go on, you can name a million, but what's really crazy about it is you look at the provenance of these pieces and you can see, okay, when was the last time this one sold? 10 years ago? Well, what did it say in the auction description? It said it was game worn and had a Mears LOA saying, it shows wear indicative of game use, but it wasn't tied to a specific game. Then MyGray or Resolution Photo Matching or one of the kind of the larger companies comes along and is able to match it using specific details or imperfections on the fabric and the stitching and the location of the lettering to Getty images from specific events, and the values just surged. So it's a really crazy trend, and it was a to me it was kind of the story of the last year. And I mean, as we're talking right now, yesterday was, I mean, we found out that one of the biggest, I'll say probably the biggest piece of sports memorabilia in history is going to come to market, which is the Babe Ruth called shot jersey. Um, and that had sold in 2005 or six for under $1 million. It was believed to be the same jersey, but it wasn't conclusive. And My Gray last month was able to match it using combination of like the photo matching, but also research and just based on the fact that also, in those days they wore like two road jerseys and two home jerseys per season. So it's not, it's the odds are pretty good. But and Heritage has an estimate of 30 million on it.
Whoa.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So like to me, it's just that is the story of the memorabilia industry right now, at least at the high end. And yeah, I mean, I was blown away when I found that out. But I
Interesting.
I will say just another point on that that I thought was really important was a place like Sotheby's has really embraced game worn. They have a deal with the NBA, and they've actually recently started doing like drops where they're listing almost around 150 game worn NBA jerseys on
Oh,
their.
clever. So they're creating supply with a deal with the NBA. Very, very smart.
Yeah, well, they're getting it. They're sourced from the NBA, and so and they've also done some of the largest sales, including the Last Dance jersey. But what's really my big takeaway, at least in that piece from that, is that Sotheby's is one of the oldest auction houses in the world. It's not the kind of place that deals generally um with pieces that are more tied to passion, right? Like, not that art isn't about passion, but for the most part, the people bidding on those high-end art pieces, it's about money. It's an investment. Whereas, the Jordan jersey, the person who won that, I can tell you, is probably a pretty big Jordan fan. Probably,
Yeah.
probably more so than like the person who bought the Hockney painting is a Hockney fan. So like, uh, that seal of approval, I think, was it marks kind of an inflection point there.
Okay.
Just having that name, that's just this really like industry stalwart say, you know what, this is legit and we're getting into it, and then really getting into it with their recent drops is, I mean, it's just something that's impossible to ignore. And I'm really curious to see how it goes now that there's a lot more supply on the lower end. You know, there's stuff that's more affordable for people. It's not just the $1 million stuff.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. It'll also be interesting to see the first time they get a photo match wrong. I haven't seen that yet, but I can't imagine there must be somewhere that this they got the stitch wrong or something. But I don't want to be negative. I think
I'm sure it's happened. I mean, like, look, I think we talked about this earlier, but it's like the grading companies for cards get things wrong. You know,
exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
sure, you know, what I will say is that there is an element uh, of education with the photo matching where, you know, in the auction lot, you're viewing the company Migrate or whoever it is showing their work. They're saying they show
Right.
an image and they draw a line and say this is where
Exactly.
we're seeing it,
Yeah.
you know. So
Here's the
that
proof.
a little bit, that kind of soothes you know, my worries a little bit.
Sure.
Because at least it puts the onus on you to be like, well, I'm looking at it and it looks good, you know.
Right.
Um,
Okay. I like it. All right. So in summary, we've done so five interesting areas of the hobby that, could be growing or just interesting to look at. The first was movie stubs. The second was vintage autographs. The third was just particular niches. Tennis was the example we used. Uncut sheets, which I think are pretty cool, and then this whole game worn trend. So I like this. This is helpful. It's cool to have somebody with their pulse. You're talking to people on the street at auction houses all the time, at PSA and so forth. So you're really like in the weeds and you know what's happening. And for you to come up, with these interesting areas is pretty cool. So it's super helpful. Well, thank you for coming on. What is a great way, or what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you? Either maybe A, they're interested in one of your stories and just want to talk about it, or B, maybe they have a story idea or information that you want to use. What's the best way to find you, and how can they follow Collect Media?
yeah, so we're so collect CLLCT media on I think both Twitter and Instagram. And I'm pretty much just on Twitter, Will double underscore Stern. And that's pretty much where I'm best reached and where I spend most of my social media time because I don't really understand Instagram.
All right, sounds good. Well, thanks again for coming on. This has been super
Dude,
fun. Appreciate it.
awesome.